It's Robert here, and I got with me a man whose work I have followed for quite a long time, be it through his television work or his comic books, Mr. Judd Winick.
How are you, sir? It's good to
Yeah,
be here. Thanks for having me.
no problem. Thanks for coming on. You've been in the game quite a long time. Now, you haven't worked for the big two since you left around the New 52, aside from like that Robin story you did. So, what you
Mhm.
been up to?
Well, for the last about 6 or 7 years, I do a graphic novel series for Random House called Hilo.
Ah,
Um, yeah, no, it's we're coming up on the eighth book in the series
mm,
next year. Um, and for those who don't know, it's an all ages series that I write and draw. Uh, it's done quite well,
I
and
would
that
assume
is
so.
yeah, um, and it more than keeps me busy, and it's a lot of
Right.
fun. I
Hmm.
mean, it was born out of my son.
Mm.
Goodness, so this is going back almost about 9 years ago at this point. So
Ah.
when he was 7 years old, he was taking an interest in some of my superhero comics.
Ah.
In particular, he wanted to read my Batman comics. And I was explaining to him like, oh no, you
Oh
can't read my
boy. Oop.
Batman comic. Yeah, no, it's like a lot of parental murder and death and decapitation. It's but more to the point that it's kind of intense, and he was 7. Um, so I hunted around for a book series I thought he would dig, and I got him Bone, uh,
Oh, yep, yep.
Jeff Smith's Bone, and he just
Mm-hmm.
absolutely flipped for it, just loved
Mm-hmm.
it, and rifled through like all 9 graphic novels, went bananas.
Mm-hmm.
I happen to know Jeff Smith. He's a buddy of mine.
Right.
I spoke to Jeff and said, my son just went crazy, go nuts, bananas for Bone. And then Jeff turned around and said, yeah, all right. Well, listen, I'm going to send you guys something in the mail. And sure enough, about 2 weeks later, we got this gigantic box of Bone
Oh,
merchandise from Jeff.
nice.
It had everything. It had stuffed animals and action figures and posters and hats and T-shirts. And my son became a Bone super fan. Um, and me, looking at my son going crazy, go nuts, bananas for Bone, I got kind of jealous because because I just figured, I'm a cartoonist. I should be able to make a story that he likes as much as Bone. So it was around then I started working on an all ages book. Now,
Hmm.
it's marketed for 8 to 12 year olds, but high low, and we're about 7 years in, and I got to say that the experiment is working in that way. That I geared it towards everybody. I wanted it to
Hmm.
be a book that moms and dads, if they were reading it with their kids, or if you had some comic book readers who were following me back in my superhero days, would pick it up, would also
Hmm.
dig it as well. And so, thankfully, it is an all ages book, and it's doing real well. And I'm very very happy.
I'm glad to hear that. So, what got you into doing comics? I mean, some people might know that you, like, when the world first heard about you during your time on the Real World, or were you already at DC by that point? I always get the time.
Oh no no
Mis-
no no! It's
no.
just, no. I was 24 when I
Hmm.
did the show a million years
Yep.
ago. When I did the real world, um, I had well, two things. One, I had always read superhero comics for as
Hmm.
long as I could possibly remember.
Right.
But I was a cartoonist, and I really wanted to do a comic strip.
Hmm.
I wanted to do a daily syndicated comic strip, and that was always my goal. And taking a very very long story, and making it very very short. Um, I after doing the real world, one of my housemates on the show, my roommate on the show, was a young man named Pedro Zamora.
Yep. Pedro.
Pedro was a 22-year-old AIDS educator and activist. He passed away
Hmm.
not long after we finished filming the show.
Right.
Um, my girlfriend at the time, who was also my housemate on the show, Pam Ling,
Hmm.
we met doing the real world. She and I started going around the country and lecturing and giving
Hmm.
talks about Pedro. And she had to go back to medical school. And for me, after about 2 years of touring and lecturing, it got to be kind of hard. So I stopped
Hmm.
doing it, stopped lecturing. I went back to doing cartooning. I actually got a comic strip syndicated. It was called Frumpy
Hmm.
the Clown, and it started running in newspapers. Um, it was around that time that I started thinking about that I wanted to maybe uh, somehow continue to tell Pedro's story in some way. And I thought about introducing a character like Pedro into my comic strip. like an Uncle Peter, and maybe
Right.
he comes out at one point, maybe he tests positive at one point. I don't know. And I
Right.
started just sketching this character who would be Uncle Peter, who looked a lot like Pedro. And as I was doing it, it sort of felt kind of trite. It felt kind of thin that she tried to tell a story through a comic strip. And
Mm-hmm.
I had this sort of sense of immediacy that I kind of wanted to tell it sooner than later.
Mm-hmm.
So I decided then to try and do a graphic novel, which I'd never done before. I'd never done sequential art like this. I'd just done comic
Mm-hmm.
strips and illustration, things like that. So it took me about 2.5 years,
Mm-hmm.
starts and stops, or rather just starting over again and over
Right.
again. And eventually it just turned into a 250-page comic book. So I say
Pedro
all
and
that to
me,
say
right?
that, and it became Pedro and Me. That was
Yep.
my first graphic novel. And again, it
Mm-hmm.
was the first time I ever did anything like that. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so with that jump ahead, one of my earliest readers was editor Bob Schreck, who at the time was at Dark
Ah.
Horse.
Mm-hmm.
So Bob Schreck, who was the editor on Sin City, one of
Mm-hmm.
Frank Miller's ongoing editors. So Bob was a buddy of mine. He read it.
Mm-hmm.
He really enjoyed the work. The book got published, and even before it got published, Bob Schreck got a job at DC Comics.
Yep.
Uh, he left Dark Horse. He started Oni Press, which was
Mm-hmm.
his own comic book company, and then went over to DC Comics. And when he got there, he gave me a call based on Pedro and Me. He said, like, have you ever thought about writing superhero comics?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, like all the time. But
Yep.
but I wouldn't know where to begin. And Bob basically took me through how to do a comic book script. He sent me scripts. We worked on it,
Mm-hmm.
and I started writing superhero comics. So that's the long way around what got me
Yep.
into superhero comics. I've read them my entire life, and then suddenly it was, you know, the kid in the candy store, or like more like a kid in a toy store.
Right.
That like
Right.
suddenly you get to play with all the toys,
Mm-hmm.
and that's how it started. Like that's from like 1994 to around 2000 is when I
Mm-hmm.
started writing Green Lantern.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yep.
So
You
that
took over from Ron Mars, and got
yeah, no, I mean, I'm laughing when I do that. Like, I only took over from Ron Mars.
no, 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 no.
That,
I wasn't. I
no,
was
I'm saying
good.
like enormous shoes to fill.
Oh yeah,
I mean,
especially dealing
luckily,
with the one Green Lantern.
oh no, no, and thankfully it was beyond with Ron's blessing. Ron
Mm-hmm.
had been writing Green Lantern for forever
Right.
at this point. And when he was finally thinking of stepping away, he and Bob had talked about who they wanted to do, carry on the book, and my name came in the mix. And Ron actually read, I think he read Peter and Me before it even came out.
Mm-hmm.
So I got Ron's blessing, and we talked about the character. And it was just everybody should have that experience when they first start writing superhero comics, that they get the longtime scribe and storyteller on it
Right.
to one, give their blessing, and two, walk them through the
Mm-hmm.
character and where they see it and where they imagine it going. It was amazing. It was amazing.
Yep. And during your time, one of the things you would introduce during Green Lantern that would eventually get a much even bigger role was the concept of Ion. Now, obviously, when you came up with that, you probably never even considered where that concept would go when Jeff got his hands on it, right?
No, no, no.
Yeah.
No, it was just a fun big story to do.
Mm-hmm.
Born out of um, a lot of things. For those playing at home, uh, this was at one point Kyle Rayner, who was the Green Lantern at
Yep.
the time, basically got all of the power of the massive Green
Mm-hmm.
lantern, which powers all of the Green Lantern rings, which there were almost none except his own at that point,
Mm-hmm.
and kind of gave him the power of a god. Um, so that was a fun story to do,
Yep.
and a blast that, like doing any of the superhero comics, it's always a lot of fun that you come up with a story or a character and whatnot,
Yep.
and then it goes out in the world, and then you see other people pick it up and mess with it later. It's
Yep.
it's fun.
Yep. And then eventually you had done, as shown in here, you would take over from Scott Lobdell was the Blink miniseries, and eventually go on to do Exiles. That
Yeah.
Wow, that was an incredible series, and your run on that was really fun. Just the idea of taking the what if and making a whole ongoing out of it like that. I mean, was it your idea, or did Marvel come to you about it, or how did that play out?
Both those things.
Both.
Marvel came to me with the idea that they wanted to do a team of mutants led by Blink,
Hmm.
who were from alternate realities, and they had I think it was called this. There was this one book of pinups. It was called I think it was called Millennium Visions or something. I
Probably
can't
like
quite
that.
remember.
Yeah.
Um, and all it was artists who like just drew crazy versions of these characters from different from different realities and whatnot. And they were just pulling them out of their butt. They were just fun stuff
Right,
to draw.
right.
In there, one of them was Nocturne, who was Nightcrawler's daughter. That was the only
Hmm.
one I think I pulled out of the book. The
Right.
rest I just made up and I had some fun with. But I went to them with the idea that, well, why don't we do this thing where it's kind of like a what if monthly? What if the alternate reality team hops into alternate realities of our regular Marvel timeline, and they got to fix it.
Hmm.
They got to fix these timelines,
Quantum leap
and
it.
yeah, somewhere between Quantum Leap and Sliders, rip it all
Yep.
up. What
Hmm.
if Quantum Leap, Sliders, you steal from enough different places, suddenly it's
Yep.
original. So I put together a team that it was a lot of fun because I was a huge fan of What If. I was basically just doing fan fiction of so many of the stories that I grew up loving. Um, and it was the only book I think in my entire writing of mainstream superhero comics that I walked away from when I wasn't quite done yet.
Hmm.
Um, I had gotten an offer to become exclusive to DC, and I actually threw it to Dan Didio. Like, can I keep working on Exiles? Like, no.
Oh,
that's the opposite of what exclusive means. You can keep doing
right.
Barry. We can keep doing Barry Ween, but
Hmm.
you can't keep doing Exiles.
Ah.
So
Yeah, because I noticed you
which
left around 25. Chuck Austin took a few issues, and then you did a few more. Was that to wrap things up or something? Or
no, I think Chuck did one story arc while I forget if I was just running late. I had like one last story
ah,
arc, so Chuck jumped in there with one, or they might have just gone bi-weekly for like 2 months
something like
as
that.
some kind of weird event thing.
Right.
But again, I had finished up before
Hmm.
I could like really get into stuff. I
Right.
was planning on one of the bigger story arcs. I was planning like I kept doing the team would get stuck on a particular world for two, maybe 3 issues.
Right.
And I was planning on maybe doing a longer story where they were stuck someplace for a year, or it wasn't working. They couldn't quite
Hmm.
figure it out. But again, it was great because it was pretty early in
Hmm.
my career of writing superhero comics. I was really fresh to it. I was working with some sensational artists
Right.
uh, who who
Definitely.
who were very, very, very happy to draw the wacko stuff we came up with. It was
Hmm.
fun. It was a
Yep.
fun book. I really had a great time doing it.
Right. Now, one of my friends in the chat room, Nerdette, there will be, if I didn't bring this up, she would never forgive me. You basically took what, now Hush started doing it, then they backpedaled out of it, and you decided, well, why don't we do it still? You brought Jason Todd back as the Red Hood.
Yeah.
And yeah, how was that? I mean, being able a chance to do what Hush chickened out on doing and actually make it a good story. Well, that's pretty much what they did, right? Weren't they? Didn't they just chicken out at the last second? Like, and then,
I think it was well. Okay, for starters, I'll tell you from my point of view and also what the story that I know behind the scenes.
all right.
Um, I was reading Hush like everyone else. For those playing at home,
Mm-hmm.
Hush was uh, a maxi series within the series, written by Jeff Loeb and illustrated by Jim Lee. Uh,
Phenomenally
what?
illustrated.
Oh, it was beautiful, and they had just about every villain you could possibly imagine.
Mm-hmm.
And the main antagonist was a villain named Hush, who seemed to know a crap ton about Bruce Wayne,
Yep.
um, and his face was covered with bandages. So look it up. Anyway,
Yep.
so towards the end there, after many, many machinations and things going on, Hush finally reveals himself, and it turns out that he's Jason Todd, who was thrown into the Lazarus pit and has been, rejuvenated and brought back to life. And when I read that, my head just fully
Mhm.
exploded. I just went
Mhm.
bananas.
Yep.
I thought it was the
Oh.
greatest idea. I saw the whole story, like 100 miles of broken road. I mean, you
Yep.
get to have your cake and eat it too. He
Yep.
still gets to be Batman's greatest failure, and at the
Mhm.
same time, he became a villain and took everything he taught. I'm like, oh, that's great.
Yep.
And then the next issue, they took it back and said, no, it's not really Jason Todd. He was Clayface.
Oh
Clayface
boy,
pretending to be
people
Jason
were
Todd.
not happy about that from what I recall. They were like, "Oh."
And I too was a little like, oh, okay, well, that's another way to go. All right, that's
Mhm.
kind of disappointing.
Right.
So, not too long after that,
Mhm.
my turn on the Ferris wheel came up where, Bob Schreck, who's the editor on Batman, um,
Yep.
and had my name in the hopper for a while.
Mhm.
Um, and so threw it to Dan DiDio that like I want Judd to take over after so and so finishes up here and there.
Mhm.
And so Dan and Bob threw it to me like, well, so what's the big story you have? I said, I kind of want to really bring Jason Todd back. It's like, yeah. It's like, yeah. What about Hush? Like, I don't worry about it. Like, I'll work that out. I was like, I can work that out much later. How that was actually him or whatever. But then I pitched him
Mhm.
the story about bringing Jason Todd back, and everyone was very happy. Um, and I came up with the idea like, yeah, no, he's gonna call himself the Red Hood because
Mhm.
that's flipping the bird to just about everybody, flipping the
Yep.
bird to Joker, to Batman. There's
Yep.
some irony
Everyone.
to it. It's like, yeah, it's fateful. Um, so from that moment of when he appeared in Hush, and I saw it like 100 miles of busted road, I got to tell the opera, uh,
Mhm.
and I was psyched. And
Yep.
I'm deeply pleased how much people have enjoyed the story even still.
Mhm.
Pleased how uh, Jason Todd Red Hood has definitely got legs. He's out
Yep.
there and still out there in the monthlies. He is in video
Mhm.
games. He's on Titans.
Yep.
They're talking about doing a movie, all that jazz. So it's
Mhm.
fun. It's
Yep.
a lot of fun.
Now, originally, was the idea of the Superboy Prime punching the wall thing ever meant to be connected to it, or did that come like let's tie this into Infinite Crisis?
That was one of the plans from the beginning. I had
Ah, okay.
so this is how it went. From the beginning, we're planning on that for those playing at home.
Yep.
This is
I got
so
it right here with
complicated.
me.
Yeah, I'll explain it as best I can. We were doing this massive crossover event,
Yep.
and it's kind of a DC multiverse sort of thing.
Yep.
And one of the characters who was sort of out there in the ether was Superboy, which in the modern version of Superman, in his modern canon, he doesn't exist.
Right.
So there was a
Exactly.
multiverse out there where Superboy did exist, but he got
Silver Age
basically,
level powers.
yeah, but he got trapped.
Yep.
And the idea is that Superboy, in attempting to escape this kind of energy glass
Limbo. There's limbo. Yeah.
cage limbo, yeah. And every time he tried to escape, it sent a crack or a ripple through time and would mess
Yep.
with our timeline.
The
So we thought
retcon
that,
punches. Yeah.
yeah. And we had thought this is how Jason came back from the beginning. I had another version in my back pocket from the jump
Right.
involving the Lazarus pit, and actually one that was even more elaborate than that,
Mm-hmm.
with the Lazarus pit and all that. Um, and when it came time to do the backstory, the origin of how
The
Jason
annual.
came
Yeah.
back, I'd actually we chickened out, and it's like, I had told Dan, it's like yeah, I think if we do the Superboy thing, they're gonna kill us. And he goes, yeah, I think you're right. I think you're right. So I'd actually written the script, and it was being drawn. They hadn't Sean actually hadn't gotten to that part of the story quite yet.
Mm-hmm.
Um, when Dan had been like, he just did 3 conventions in a row,
Mm-hmm.
and he came back and said, I think I'm out there, and the crossover event thing is so unbelievably, it's all anyone's talking about. It's
Mm-hmm.
like we've really sort of captured something. It's all anyone's talking about.
Oh yeah.
I feel like I think we should do it. And I said, well, yeah, it's like in the present take us right now today. I think this is a story we need to tell.
Right.
Uh, Now, a year later, when Dan and I
Mm-hmm.
talked about it, We said it had absolutely no evergreen quality whatsoever.
Right.
Like, a year later, it seemed weird. It stunk up the
Yeah.
joint. I mean, a lot of you were equally divided right when we printed it. That
Hmm.
Jason Todd came back, goes, Superboy punches a wall and retcons this thing and blah
Yep.
blah blah, opposed to just a Lazarus Pit story.
Right.
So uh, when I got the opportunity to write it as an animated movie,
Yep.
yeah, we just made it less complicated. It's like we're not going to
Definitely.
do that. We're go with like one of the original ideas. So I'll
Yep.
say this. I'll say
Hmm.
this. At the time, like literally that week, that month we did it,
Hmm.
it felt right. It made sense,
Right.
as part of like all of the wackadoo
Hmm.
stuff going on with this
Yep.
huge crossover event. It fit.
Hmm.
But again, a year later, no,
Yeah.
not so much. Not so much.
Definitely. One of those things, yeah, like you said, it's felt right in the short term. In the long term,
Sure.
yeah.
But that's the thing with comics. You're not I mean, I
Yeah.
really am of the mind.
Hmm.
You're not supposed to be creating stories that like what are they going to look like 5 years ago from now?
Right.
Like,
Because you never
no,
know.
you're
You
at
never know. It could get retconned or ignored by the next arc.
yeah, and you know what? It's okay if they do. I mean, stories
Hmm.
you did 10 years ago, they're still there. They're in
Yep.
print. They're in books. You can read them.
Hmm.
But, you
Exactly.
know, but, but some of the things you did or the characters or whatnot might have changed a lot. This is the only medium
Hmm.
that exists like this.
Oh yeah.
Batman's been around for 80 years.
Hmm.
There's nobody who does this where you have characters who exist and have an ongoing story and
Hmm.
they've been around for 80 years and they never grow.
Right.
They
Oh,
don't
that is
change.
true. That is very true.
Yeah. So within that, you're always trying to keep it in the present tense in some way, shape, or form. That's the art of it. That's
Hmm.
the small piece of real estate you're given to tell these stories now. I mean, Superman can't go to a phone booth and get changed, and Clark Kent can't go change into Superman in a phone booth.
Right.
They don't exist
They
anymore,
don't exist anymore. Yeah.
and we don't even have payphones anymore. Like
Nope.
it seems like a small thing, but
Hmm.
I mean,
Yeah.
similarly, I mean, there was talk, and there's like sort of a New 52 discussion
Hmm.
um, when Lois and Superman got married.
Yep.
A lot of that was born out of, and this was before my time, just before my time.
Right.
Uh, a lot of that was born out of the idea that Lois Lane is not this stupid. She's
Oh yeah.
supposed to be one of the best journalists
Yep.
in the
Lois
world.
Lane. How dumb was she? Was a gag.
Yeah, yeah, no, she's supposed to be a Pulitzer Prize winner. She's as
Yeah.
sharp as a tack. How can she not know this
Just because
person
of
who
the
she spent?
glasses.
It seemed after a while antiquated and dumb. So she
Yeah.
should figure it out, and we'll take the story from there.
Yep.
Yes, there is something incredibly iconic
About the love
about
triangle.
the love triangle, of course. But at
Yep.
the same time, you have to acknowledge that like sometimes it doesn't make much sense anymore. So you gotta move on from
Trust
it.
me, I agree with that. I know there are some creators out there, not naming any names, who really want to hold on to it to the point where they wanted to almost railroad it into, keeping it. I'm not going to name names, but I think some people might know who I'm talking about. Again, love the guy's work, but that's the one thing I disagree with him on. But I
I
will say
no,
this.
but
Yeah.
I even get it. I even get it.
Hmm.
And you
Oh
know what?
yeah.
It's something that well, the thing is, it doesn't necessarily work with a monthly superhero comic,
Nope.
but to do something in a short term, like they're gonna before I'm dead, they'll at least make another 25 Superman movies.
Oh yeah.
Um, and somewhere in there, someone will make a trilogy of them
Hmm.
where at first Lois doesn't know who he is, and she
Exactly.
discovers it, and they fall in love, and whatever. And you know what? And the entire story will end, and she'll
Hmm.
still know who he is, and they're a couple or they're not a couple or
Yep.
whatnot. But that'll be that present tense story that you tell, and it's
Exactly.
okay. I mean,
Oh yeah.
I'll go far out in the ledge. And
Hmm.
comic books, and rather superhero characters are very much like
Hmm.
uh, it's very much like Shakespeare.
Hmm.
These Shakespeare's been around forever, and there's a reason
Oh
why we
yeah.
keep doing these plays and telling these stories in different
Definitely.
machinations, in period dress or in modern dress, and in reinterpreting, and sometimes in the original language and sometimes not. Superhero comics are very much that same way too. And I think
Hmm.
100 years from now, we will still be seeing X-Men and Batman and
Oh
Superman and
yeah.
Spider-Man stories, uh,
Mm-hmm.
but they will take on different forms.
Yep.
Uh, but in the short term, there's always growing pains. So people like,
Right.
ah, you ruined it. It's
Ah,
like,
yep. Ruined forever.
yes, you
But
destroyed my childhood.
I've heard that before. But I would say it's one maxi series you did that kind of after it ended kind of didn't go anywhere. But I love what you told was Trials of Shazam. You
Yeah.
completely changed the mythos, and then afterwards it felt like DC didn't seem to know what to do with it afterwards. What happened?
I think New 52 happened not too
New
long
50.
after that. Um,
There was a couple years before New 52, I
oh no, no,
think.
it was, it was. I mean, I think
Yeah.
for those playing at home, Captain Marvel, the
Hmm.
original Billy Batson Captain Marvel,
Yep.
um, stopped being Captain Marvel and he became the Wizard.
Hmm.
And Captain Marvel Jr. had to prove himself to get kicked up to the head office and become Captain Marvel, or rather be
Right.
renamed Shazam to finally get
Yep.
away from
All the
uh,
legal mumbo
all
jumbo.
legal copyright issues. So we did it, and he popped up here and there, but he didn't get a monthly.
Hmm.
Um, I think it was a matter of like a lot of it we just didn't get around to, and then a
Right.
couple of years after that, we finally, um,
Reset.
we had New 52, so there's a reset anyway. But
Mhm.
yeah, I love that series.
Yep.
That was
Oh,
really
that was
I
just
got
so
into the real.
fresh.
Oh, thanks, thank you.
Yeah.
Um, I was able to. I spent a couple of years doing Shazam.
Hmm.
Um, you know, uh, first with Josh Middleton, we did First
Hmm.
Thunder, which is still one of my favorite stories.
Oh yeah.
Um,
The
then
three
I got to,
part the three part crossover leading into Day of Vengeance during Infinite
yeah,
Crisis.
yeah, that was not long after that, and then I got to do the Maxi series. I mean, it was just,
Hmm.
I was laughing when I got an invitation to come to the premiere of
Hmm.
the Shazam movie. Um, all of us creators who had worked on the character, and I
Hmm.
realized when we got there, there's not a lot of us. There's not a
Not
lot.
really. Jerry
There really,
Ordway, Jeff, you, oof. I'm
Mike,
trying to think about
my
that are
buddy.
still around. What?
Well, it's my buddy Mike Kunkel,
Oh, Mike. Oh,
who
yep, Mike Uncle. Yep, he did.
Mike Kunkel
He
and
did.
Jeff Smith.
Jeff Smith,
There was like it was a small group. There was not a lot done with Captain Marvel
Peter
Shazam for a
Tomasi.
long time. Yeah, yes. Well, so it was me,
Yeah,
Mike Kunkel, our wives,
yeah.
Shazam. It was a lot of fun going to the premiere. I got to tell you that.
Oh, yeah, I
Um,
bet.
and
Before we get,
we were sort of pleased that they kind of tapped into what we were always shooting for with
hmm.
Captain Marvel. That um, it was the idea, sort of big meets Superman.
Oh, yeah,
But he's still a kid
definitely.
when he becomes Captain Marvel. He's still a kid in there.
Oh, yeah.
Um,
'Cause I know
so
there's some versions where it's a different personality. I like both, to be honest. I like both, where he's either a different personality or it's Billy just grown up.
it's yeah. I mean, I get the idea. I mean, I know the arguments. I've been
Hmm.
through this. That
Yeah.
because
Yep.
when he becomes Captain Marvel, he has the wisdom of Solomon, so he won't act like a kid.
Hmm.
Which I always push back, like, right, except that's absolutely no fun. There's no
Exactly.
there's no fun in that. I
Hmm.
always felt what was beautiful about the story is that even though Billy's a kid, he's incredibly wise. It's why he was chosen.
Right,
He
exactly.
doesn't, and there's something fun about having someone who basically can kick it like Superman,
Yeah.
but is
Maybe
still
even
very
kick
much
Superman's ass, even.
even it need be, yeah, 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 but still, be a kid in a lot of ways
Exactly.
that can get excited about it things the way Superman wouldn't. That's
Exactly.
the difference between the characters. Just
Hmm.
having another serious grown man and his powers come
Yeah.
from
Who?
magic opposed to the power of the yellow sun. It's like this is what makes him different. He's
Exactly.
got he's got a kid's innocence. He's got a kid's
Exactly.
naivete.
Hmm.
He believes in people a little more. And now and again, when things happen, his reaction will be like "Holy moly!" Like
Holy moly!
it's
Exactly.
yeah,
The big
that's
red
fun for me.
cheese.
Yeah, yeah,
Yep. Now, before this interview, I'm now jumping around a bit because I want to try and get
sure.
all that I want to talk about. But during your New 52 Catwoman, which, yeah, bringing in the sex appeal and all that, I saw the never released pages that Gilliam March had posted of what you guys originally
Yeah.
were going to do. What was the plan there of her figuring out that he was bruised, going onto his front lawn and just stripping down at everything? What was the plan there? Since obviously you redid it, completely different story. So what happened?
Well, to tell it briefly, and those playing at home.
Mm-hmm.
So we relaunched New 52. I was writing Catwoman, and
Mm-hmm.
Gillian March was our artist. And one of the things I wanted to do is that Batman and Catwoman were going to actually get into a relationship, like a real
Uh,
relationship.
yep.
Um, and I even said on the end of the first issue they should finally sleep together because it's something
Yep.
we haven't seen or done before.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Teased with, but
and
never done.
yeah, I know I've been hinted at off camera and what. Like, no, let's just see them
Yeah.
do it and whatnot. And I had kind of a 2 year arc planned
Mm-hmm.
where Catwoman was going to begin because we'd always I wanted to start as sort of a street level hammer and nails criminal
Mm-hmm.
thief,
Right.
and then work up to the high end uh, the high end criminal that she would later become.
Right.
The actual like cat burglar, you know,
Exactly.
more a high society. But I wanted to
She
start
was
from
in it for
humble
the thrill
beginnings.
at first, and then started to
Yeah,
actually take it more like, no, this is a job kind of a thing.
yeah, yeah. No, like and in ways more about a con, more about
Yep.
and that was gonna be the growth of the character. And with that, I wanted Batman to be part of her life, and the two of them. Well, for her, she is someone who's addicted to danger and risk and cannot help herself. Incredibly
Right.
impulsive. Um, And with Batman, that this is the one person that he just can't control himself with. He's just crazy about her.
Yep.
And I didn't actually see it necessarily as this romantic love per
Right.
se.
There's a
It's
lust.
just, yeah, desire, that he's just, that
Yeah.
there's a man under the cowl there and he's just crazy
Exactly.
about her in this way. And it starts there and it
Yep.
becomes a relationship as she was going to be growing as like a character and, evolving into
Right.
a beta or greater criminal. He was going to start falling for her
Mm-hmm.
beyond just desire. He was going to get to know her
Right.
more and more. Um, but all that started from a place of like, let's tear our clothes off and we fool around. That's where we start.
Mm-hmm.
So people were deeply divided on this. There's a lot of people who hated it, a lot of people who
Right.
dug it, a
I
lot of people who
remember.
enjoyed arguing about it. Um, and and then I got busy.
All
About a
right.
year into my run is when I started doing my high low series, and
Right.
I was trying to. At first, I was going to juggle the two monthlies,
Mm-hmm.
Catwoman and Batwing, while doing high low, and I felt a little more comfortable handing off Catwoman because it was a good place for someone else to jump in.
Yep.
Whereas Batwing, I felt I was leaving someone high and dry
Yep.
until I basically just unwound the string enough to realize like I can't write and draw a 200-page graphic novel
Right.
every year and do anything else. That's how I stopped doing Batwing. But um, I really loved my Catwoman run. I wish I could
Yep.
have taken it to those next 12 issues and
What
seen the
about the?
characters
What about
evolve.
those? What about those pages though? Those pages. Like, where were you? Where was that
Oh, we just
story?
had
Yeah.
we yeah no we had some this bananas idea,
Mhm.
which times have changed. I wouldn't have done it now.
Right.
Um,
Right.
where basically, if I'm remembering correctly, so at one point, so Selena and Batman, when they fool
Yep.
around, they kept their masks on,
Right.
so they don't know their identities. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
and at one point, Selena, a couple issues later, is at a party and Bruce Wayne is there.
Mm-hmm.
And as a goof, she kisses him.
Yep.
And then later, she thinks on it and realizes that, like, oh, their cologne is the same or something is you
Yep.
know, they
I.
basically say, like, like they taste the same. And then she has oh my God.
Yep.
And
And what's the
she
first thing she
figures,
does?
yeah. So the first thing she does, she hops the fence to Wayne Manor. And in my mind
Just.
is that she knows that he's going to ignore her, that he's just
Mm-hmm.
going to let her stand out there, until dawn. So as
Hmm.
she walks out towards the house, she takes all her clothes off and stands there very emphatically. You know,
And the look on
now
Bruce and Alfred's face was priceless. Like,
well, yeah, well, see the way, and I'm sure if it got printed out, it got beaten up, and I'm sure that if people hear me talking about it, I'll get beaten up, and that's okay.
yeah.
The way I had envisioned it is that I saw this as very much a power move on her part.
Oh yeah.
Um, that she's gonna just I'm gonna make them so uncomfortable that they have to acknowledge me and see me and take care of this right now. I'm gonna
Right.
stand here naked on your lawn
Hmm.
until you come get me. Open the
Right.
door. Um,
And I
and I
got
was
that from what we saw without any dialogue. I got that.
yeah.
Yeah.
And with that, it was then suddenly so he was gonna they were gonna confront each other. I know who you are. You know who I am, and things were gonna go off from there. Um,
Right.
but uh, but DC wanted me to pull back.
Hmm.
Um, I can't really get into the behind the scenes of
No problem.
why this
No
happened
problem.
or what happened or why. But
Understandable.
they wanted me to pull back, and they did not want her to find out his identity.
Yep.
And we had to move on from there. So down the
Hmm.
road, I was going to push that she could find out, they could find out down the road, but they didn't want it so early in the story.
Right.
But again, it was done, it was written, it was drawn, it was good to go.
Right. So let's take away from the comics for a moment and talk about one of the other things I love that you have created, The Life and Times of Juniper Lee.
Oh,
I
thanks.
love that show. That is one of my favorites, and I'll be honest. I know now. I know I can't tell you all this stuff because it's fan fiction and all that, but I've always had this big continuation of June up in my head, that takes her into even bigger stuff. But the way you came up with the character, just again, just the idea. She's this young girl, magical protector. Technically, it skipped a generation to her. It should have gone to her father, but and she's the youngest. And unfortunately, that comes with the downsides, like, oh, she's stuck there now in this place, where normally she should have been at least, like, what was the usual average age for a Tershwanze? 20s, late
Well,
teens.
well, yeah, I know. I say like they start coming into their own in their teens, while the previous okay, those playing at home. This is an anime program that I did on
Yep.
Cartoon Network on Lifetime Juniper Lee. It's about a 12-year-old girl who more or
Mm-hmm.
less fights monsters. The entire city is
Yep.
full of magical creatures that nobody else can see except her and the other
Exactly.
magical creatures. And she's got this amulet on her wrist, which glows to tell her what she's got to go take care of business.
Yep.
And as the origin story goes, that every generation, a member of her family
Mm-hmm.
becomes the next protector. But for whatever reason, it skipped her dad and went to her, and she's like 11, 12 years
Yep.
old. So she's got to take care of this. Um, and we did 3 seasons
Yep.
and had a blast. It
Mm-hmm.
uh, it never did poorly. It never did fantastic. It was always like decent. But I
Right.
think part of also the reason why they stopped making the show or wanted to stop making the show is that it wasn't really fitting where Cartoon Network was going. I
Right.
think it kind of felt more like a Disney action adventure show.
Mm-hmm.
So even though we had a
Jake
decent
Long,
following, I
kind
think
of. Yeah.
yeah, I mean that was one of those funny things that like they
Yeah.
were
Funny.
developed.
Yeah.
The Disney Channel was developing Jake Long the exact same time
Yeah.
we were doing Juniper Lee. They came out at the same time. I mean, even like Jake Long JL, Juniper Lee JL, it was
Yeah.
weird.
It
It
was
was
weird. Both
weird.
Chinese heroes and all that.
Yeah, I mean, as we were just, we were about a year into doing the show, and it kind of came our way that they were doing it, and their show was going to come out like 3 months before ours or whatever.
Oh boy.
Um, it's just one of those funny things, like
Yeah.
like Armageddon and Deep Impact. Like we're both doing two meteorite movies. Are you kidding me?
What the? Oh
Um,
yeah. The dueling shows.
yeah, it happens.
Yeah.
So,
But yeah.
but I had a blast doing it. We weren't quite done at all.
Oh yeah. That
I
cliffhanger.
Yeah, well, for those playing at home, she's got a cohort of friends who
Yep.
don't know that she's the Tesh1Z, which
Yep.
is what she's called. She's a protector. Her little
Yep.
brother knows, and she's got a
Her older
mentor who's a
brother
tough.
kind of finds out. Yeah.
Yes.
Yep.
So um, we're eventually going to get into that more. We're going to get into more of the Scooby Gang aspect of it. That more and more of our friends were going to find out, and I even had an ending
Yeah. Oh, you
whenever
did.
the series was actually. Yeah. I'm not going to tell you, but
Obviously, obviously.
who knows? Maybe someday I get to do it. We never know.
Right, right. Well, that's part of the reason why I'm not telling you my ideas because I don't want to, But because in my head, I could take away the June stuff and go my own direction if I wanted to.
Sure,
So that's
sure,
why I'm
sure,
not
sure.
saying. That's why I'm not saying anything. All I would say is big prophecy, but a prophecy that would explain why she was so young. But it would have been one of those prophecies where it wasn't telling you exactly what was going to happen. One of those more
Right,
vague prophecies that has a set ending, but you could change that if you plan for it and all that kind of a
sure.
thing. And basically, that was my idea, trying to make her this, elevate her, give Ray Ray a destiny too, because basically, as you established, Ray Ray, it was kind of a freak accident. He got in on it, or was it?
I will say nothing.
Right. But yeah, I guess, but again, some of the ideas you came up with, like Dennis, her older brother, for one, I kind of find it kind of cute that he had a crush on a younger girl, June's friend Jody. I always thought that was kind of a bit of a cute thing. You're like, usually you're so used to the younger girl crushing on the older brother and all that. It's like nice little flip flop on that. But how he did
Thanks.
through all of his LARPing, he turns out that's how he was able to figure out magic was real, through LARPing, and that it basically they couldn't wipe his memory anymore and stuff like that. It was, I mean, again, very clever.
That was one of my favorites. The LARPing episode really came together really, really well.
Yeah, and then there's some episodes I remember, like Ray Ray becoming a monster, and then they had to do a homunculus like body to put himself into it. It's like it's one of those games where you're like, wait, so going forward, technically his original body's no more. That was always a weird thing, but I loved it. It's just great villain. Oh, Laura Jill Miller. I gotta say,
It was
I can
great.
never look back to her as Kari from Digimon without expecting her yelling like June, like "Get back here!"
No, we had like kind of a murderer's row in our
Yeah,
cast. I mean, we had
Tara Strong, Candy
Laura
Milo.
Jamiller, Tara Strong, Candy Milo,
Yeah,
um, Phil
Colleen.
Lamar was a
Yep,
Colleen was actually Phil Lamar was a recurring character on there.
yep.
Carlos Alazraki,
Oh,
uh,
yeah, Monroe.
yeah,
Amy Hill as Ama.
Amy Hill was bananas.
I
So great.
loved her. I loved it when you had her
So
be
great.
young and made her younger. And my favorite bit's always been the "Do you know karate?" Okay, first of all, that's Japanese, not Chinese. That's that whole rant of hers. I'm like, Ama's not good at acting like a kid, is she? She cannot help herself. But I gotta ask this too. You described it once as Buffy, which I understood, meets Simpsons. Where does the Simpson part fit in? I always found that weird how you described that.
It's just one of those dumbass Hollywood things where you got to describe it and like by putting two things together. So it's the Buffy and like so the general public like what's an animated thing? The Simpsons.
Oh,
There.
so you just picked that out because
It's
that's
funny. It's about a family. Whatever.
right.
So I think it was easier saying than like an animated Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
Right,
Uh,
but a friend of mine named Eric, he's a huge fan too. Just wanted to give a shout out, him that to let you know that yeah, he loves it just as much as I do.
cool.
But yeah, though, but such a shame it ended so soon because I'm probably pretty sure you've seen that there are still people who are big fans. There are so many
I
people who
do.
still want
Yeah.
it back,
Yeah.
and yeah,
And you never know. I mean, I'm not making any promises. There's nothing. I haven't had discussion one with
right.
anybody about anything, so I don't want to,
I
because
understand. I understand.
no. I'm saying just because somebody's what I was the next sentence I'm going to say is like you never know because
Right.
of all the various streaming services and all that we're doing now. That who
Oh
knows? Someone
yeah.
might ask for it to come back,
Right.
and we'll see. We'll
Yeah.
be fine.
But could you at least give me one little spoiler? Where's the barrier ever going to be taken down that was keeping her in there? Because that seems so unfair that she can never leave at such a young age.
Well, as far as I'm concerned, no, the barrier never comes down.
All right, all
No,
right.
and
So,
we'll just leave it at that.
all right,
Again,
perfectly.
I have an ending. I've always had an
All
ending,
right,
and
perfectly
I'm
fair.
not gonna tell you.
All right. No, no, I'm not even asking for it. So, so one thing, given recent events recently, was Tim Drake being revealed as bisexual, and you've brought it up many times before how you always at least teased it between him and Connor. Literally being in the closet and all that during your graduation day stuff. Um,
Well,
so how did
I,
it
I,
feel?
I was I was kidding around with that
Uh,
tweet, and
oh, you were
it still amazes me that people don't get the joke.
okay. Oh, so you
Well,
were kidding.
somebody. Well, no, okay, couple of things.
Okay.
Let me explain the tweet first.
Mm-hmm.
Someone pointed out that Tim and Connor, Superboy, and
Yep.
Robin were literally in a closet. They're like,
Yeah.
why? And someone says like, why are they in a closet? Where they have absolutely no business being here. And I joked that what did I say? That I wanted to give them an opportunity to finally come out of the closet.
Right.
They're in
People
a
latched
closet,
on
and
to
it's
that.
well, they actually took that as like some kind of canon. I will say, so that said, one, I was joking.
Mhm.
Two, as far as I was concerned, I always saw uh, Tim Drake as being gay. Um,
Ah.
I know, I always had. I mean, from forever, even when he was introduced as Robin.
Mm-hmm.
Um, at that point, we're on our third Robin, and
Right.
I'm thinking like, yeah, and when I was given the opportunity to write him here and there, I was kept that in mind,
Mm-hmm.
and maybe a little bit of coding here and there, a little bit of hint
Right.
here and there. Um, you know, so
Right. Right.
that was always there. And as far as of his friends, whom might he be sweet on, I always thought that like he and Connor would make a nice couple.
Well, given how
So when I
he
wrote
act, I'm
them,
sorry. Sorry. Sorry.
yeah, no, I was saying like every time I wrote them,
Mm-hmm.
which wasn't that often, when I wrote them, I always had that dynamic in mind.
Mm-hmm.
And it seemed that people did pick up on that, like
Oh yeah.
a lot. Um, but yes, the little tweet about them joking about
Yeah. That
coming out
was
of
a
the
joke. That
closet
was. Yeah.
because they're literally in a closet. It's a joke.
Exactly. Well,
Clearly.
it didn't help that it looked like they were putting, like at least Connor was putting pants on and all that. It was like,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yep. But I would personally say what really got me was both a little bit of that, but also just how much he's trying to bring Connor back after Connor died, and it just felt like okay, this reached levels of obsession where, as we find out later on, he was willing to become a villain in a future to bring Connor back. It's like okay, you do not do that because you're just so desperate because you want to bring, you've lost everyone, you want to bring someone back. You do not reach that level of obsession with one character, multiple, but not one. It's like it was there.
What?
It was always there.
Yeah, I mean, I could go to both. I could see both angles to it. That one, this was his best friend, and he wasn't going to quit. And at the
Exactly.
same time, this was also his best friend, who he was more than a little bit in love with,
Right.
and it was just breaking his heart. I could see
Exactly.
both sides. I could see both
Exactly.
sides of it.
Exactly. One of the other books I have that I really like was the Insiders crossover. Was that always something you and Jeff had planned when you both started the separate titles, or did it just work into place there?
No, at that Jeff and I Jeff and I planned a lot of stuff
Mm-hmm.
back when. I mean, a lot of it comes right out of when Jeff was doing Teen Titans and I was doing Outsiders.
Mm-hmm.
We would work our stories back and forth and talk to each other quite often about a lot of it. It was a
Right.
blast. It was a lot of fun.
Mm-hmm.
So it was always great to be able to do stuff like that. So we had worked a lot of that stuff out well
Yeah,
in advance.
that was
Well in advance.
that was a great crossover. That was so good. Just having two traders that get triggered at the same time and everything. And yeah, and then eventually you did Titans,
Yep.
which I also really enjoyed this. Were you going to do the crossover Death Trap? 'Cause I know Marv Wolfman took over at that point, but were you going to write that, or and something happened, or what?
I don't remember.
All right.
I don't remember if I was just going to be doing the 12 issues and I was going to continue with the next crossover,
Mm-hmm.
or it was always, and it might have been one of those things that was up in the air that like this is going to lead to that,
Right.
and I'm either going to do it or depending on what's going on. I forget what. There's a couple other monthlies I got pulled on that I had to that it was easier to pass it off to, you know,
Oh yeah,
an up and
I
coming this
understand.
up and coming writer, Mark Wolfman.
Oh, but also your brief return to Batman after Battle for the Cowl. This was also very good. Now, it's fun with Better Call. I keep on hearing conflicting things. Were you originally supposed to write the main mini? Was it always supposed to be Tony that did it? Because it felt like when you see the little preview stuff, it felt like a lot of things. When they show like old lineup of Batman, and you saw Two-Face Batman, which gets referenced in here. It kind of like we never saw it. We don't see it in the main series. We see it here. Did things change when working on Battle for the Cowl?
If I'm remembering correctly, I was doing. I think I was supposed to do 12 issues,
Mm-hmm.
and I just got murdered on a couple of deadlines, and
Right.
it was gonna. I think I wasn't. I mean, I think I was working on a TV thing. It was
Ah.
like it's a little bit of inside baseball and bad news, and
Right.
I'm gonna be late. You can't be late with this.
Mm-hmm.
Um, well, okay, maybe we can do a fill-in or two, and then it's like, do I want to do a fill-in or two, or two, or maybe I'll step off. I actually don't quite remember.
Ah.
Yeah, but it was kind of a deadline thing. I know this is
Okay.
like so unfun how the sausage is made sometimes, but this
Yeah.
really is like sometimes you don't physically have the brain space to properly do it, and you got
Right.
to take the hit and say, I can write this, but I think it's going to
Mm-hmm.
be bad. I think
Right.
it'd be better if someone else takes a swing at it. So
Oh,
this is kind of where we're
understandable.
going, and this is where we'll go. Yeah,
Yep.
yeah,
And then you eventually take playing up with what Grant had done. You then did 3 issues of Batman Robin, where you
yeah.
kind of tried to set up a new status quo for Jason afterwards. How was that getting to pick up where Grant left off?
It was fun. It was fun. It was also a fun exercise in so Grant like kind of took Jason and like turned him on his head,
Yep.
and but I think the only thing that like really probably stuck was the red hair.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it was fun just to come in and just do a couple more issues of Jason. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I want to say that might have been the last time I wrote him up until I did that little 8 pager that I did last year.
Right.
It might have been that. So
Mm-hmm.
it's a blast.
Oh yeah.
Again, um,
Would you ever want to come back to the character?
oh sure. I mean, it's this is uh, I've said this many many times before. It's I stopped writing superhero comics. I mean, I left DC. I never
Right.
saw it as like leaving DC so much as like I stopped doing the monthlies that I was
Right.
doing, and it's never say never. Um,
Right.
it's almost always about, do I have a good idea?
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I will. Smidge of bragging. DC's come back. No, DC's come back to me a couple of times about doing a couple of different things, and I've always said, okay, let me think about it. And I just never felt I had a really good idea.
Right.
Um, Whereas, I mean, like, hey, do you want to do this 8 pager for the Robin anniversary book? It's like,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. And then I thought, and like took a shower and came back like, oh, yeah, what if I just do this? Yeah, that's a good
Right.
story. And then come back like, yeah, I got an idea. And
Mm-hmm.
there's been others like,
Right.
hey, we're having this other big anniversary book. Can you do a contribution?
Green
Like,
Arrow or something.
yeah. And it came back like, I got nothing. It's
Right.
like, because sometimes the little short stories are hard,
Right. Oh
and the
yeah.
big and the big stories are equally hard.
Definitely.
So again, yeah, I know at some point I'll come back and I'll write some more superhero comics for sure. I mean, I am
Right.
writing my own superhero comics right
Right.
now.
Right. Right.
But it was never about not wanting to do it anymore. It was never about uh, having some falling out with DC or something.
All right. I
It
never
was
saw
it,
that. I never thought that.
no, we left on really nice terms, and I loved the
Mm-hmm.
work I did there, and and I enjoy the fact that the characters and a lot of stories I did are, they're all still in print, and people are still digging on them, and that's fun. It's a lot of
Yep.
fun.
Yep. Well, last week I had Jimmy Palmiotti on, and best known with the Power Girl run, and when you took over that one, I gotta say it was interesting how you took what they set up, took the ball, ran with it, and obviously did something very different. You were tied into with Generation Lost, but
Yeah,
which I love both of these though. I just thought this was just
thanks.
so, I mean, especially with Generation Lost, how it just redefined people with the that era of the Justice League and everything. And by that point, people always kept saying they got the short end of the stick so much ever since Infinite Crisis. Like how many of them got killed off, or Max being made evil, things like
Yeah.
that. But well, first of all, with Generation Lost, how was it working on that? And just coming, like, did you have everything planned out, or was it the case where you had it planned out to a point, and then JMS's Wonder Woman threw a wrench into things? Because I seem to recall that happened partway through.
All of that. Well,
All of
for
that.
openers, it was coming out twice a month.
Mm-hmm.
So I was just writing it all the time. Like I was just
Mm-hmm.
writing. I was writing Just League International all the time, all the time.
Right.
And we had a really good sense of how it was going to end and wrap up, um, and with other sort of machinations in there. There was
Right.
a big old monkey wrench in the middle
Right.
where John Straczynski was writing Wonder Woman,
Yep.
and he created a storyline where the entire world forgets she existed.
Mm-hmm.
And we, I believe, this was such a big deal that because she was a very important part of our
Oh yeah, for
story.
Max. Max wanted revenge.
Yeah, so yes, Max Lord had been killed by her and then brought back to life, and she was to be a very important part of our story. Now suddenly no one knows who she is,
Mm-hmm.
and I said, but what are we going to do? I think that's why I flew to New York. I think I flew to New
Mm-hmm.
York and sat down with my editors, uh, and we talked about it a bunch.
Mm-hmm.
And what happened? I mean, that's why it's great to get in front of people and hash out in a room and figure it out. And sometimes these problems are good. And also, again, it's another present tense story. You look at that story 10 years later.
Right.
You're looking at it and looking like, so what happened with Wonder Woman? Why does no one know who she is? But
Right.
those couple of months, no one knew who she was. So the way we just turned around to play is that no one in the world remembered her except Max, and that's kind of
Yep.
all we needed. And
Right.
does anyone care that Max Lord remembers who she is? It's like nobody cared. Like, great, he will,
Yep.
and it drove him nuts. It's like,
Oh
what? That's
yeah.
even better. That's
Oh
even
yeah.
better. So it's a lot. I mean, I think people forget sometimes with comics is that they come out every month.
Yep.
And they got to keep
Exactly.
coming out every month.
Sometimes they
And
can be in a vacuum. Sometimes they're a product of their time.
oh yeah, no, and that was one of those times. Um,
Yep.
I still love the story, and I think it worked out
Oh
great.
yeah.
And
I think more so than Red Hood was the Superboy Prime punching. I think in this case it helped the story. It didn't detract
I
from
think so
it.
too. I think so too. I think, and then that's the beautiful thing is that originally it was this massive problem. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
how do we work our way around it? And then it becomes this tiny little solution, and then we're okay.
Yep. And then once you have Batman was thanks to the White Lantern ring, was able to remember, things like
Sure, right?
that.
Yeah,
My
exactly,
favorite
exactly.
though was when he convinces Dick because basically Dick keeps on coming up with all of these reasons and excuses to dodge it, and Batman says, "You're looking at least likely scenario." I am. Yes. Okay, I'm listening. But now they did the Batman. It was like a follow up to Batman Under the Red Hood, where they kind of did a Death in the Family. Were you ever asked to come back for that?
Oh, you mean the animated movie?
Yeah, the anime movie, the Death of the Family kind of
No, no, no,
prequel.
no.
No.
And I wasn't asked because they had a for again those playing at home. We did the animated movie
Yep.
Under the Red Hood,
Mm-hmm.
and they did. I don't even want to call it a sequel. They did
There was,
another movie
yep.
which allowed you to choose your own adventure,
Yep.
which gave you three choices while watching it.
Yep.
That Jason Todd could die, and it would take
Mm-hmm.
us down this story. Jason Todd could live, and you'd follow the Red Hood story that I did.
Right.
And was there a third?
There was no.
Um,
He lived. No, there was. He lived and Bruce died. He lived and Bruce lived, and then he died. He died, led into basically a condensed version of this,
right.
a summed up.
Yeah. So no. So with that, we'd
Yeah.
already done all the work, and
Yeah.
that story had already been told.
Right.
So no, I didn't come back. I mean, I knew about it. They told me
All
they were
right.
doing it,
All
and that
right.
was fine.
Right. So I just wanted to know about that because it always felt. I mean, Brandon and Vetti, great job. Did a great job working on
He's
all of it.
fantastic.
Yeah, but
Fantastic.
it is. It is, especially the way he took the two directions, but it still felt close to what you did with the original.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Mm-hmm.
so yeah, I pretty much went through almost all the books I've had that you've done. but, but again, just I want to thank you so much for coming on. And actually, no, there was one other question I was going to ask. Oh, what was it? Oh yeah, was working on characters like no Green Arrow. It was Green Arrow. Now I remember it was
Mm-hmm.
Green Arrow.
Mm-hmm.
How was it working on with Ollie? Because you had a good lengthy run on that, and then eventually led into
Yes, it's
Green
5 years.
Arrow, Black
Yeah.
Canary. Yeah, Green Arrow and
Yeah.
Black Canary, and all that. And yeah, just how was it getting the chance to just work on this character who it seems to be one that you either get him or you don't. I've noticed when it comes to writing, like those who get him really get him. Those that don't really don't.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Well,
like yeah.
I like to think that I got him because I spent
Mm-hmm.
5 years with him and the Arrow family,
Mm-hmm.
um, and I just had a good time doing him. I think he's a deeply interesting character. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
it's fun that he's become more popular because of the TV
Arrow.
show. That he's like a lot more part of the zeitgeist than he was at the time.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Um, I think he, um, I think what makes him interesting is that he's really fleshed out.
Mm-hmm.
Um, that I like that from I mean, the way I always saw him and the way I always
Mm-hmm.
wrote him is that, he's kind of a troubled dude. Um, he is like the true limousine
Mm-hmm.
liberal. He's got all
Oh
the money in
yeah.
the world, but is still
Mm-hmm.
fighting for the little guy,
Yep.
including that he puts on a costume and goes and fights crime.
Mm-hmm.
Um, he's a little hypocritical here and there.
Oh yeah.
Um, he's got relationship issues.
Big time.
Uh, yeah, no, he can't stay faithful. And, and this would, uh, a lot of people dug it. A lot of people were driven crazy by it because I always
Mm-hmm.
wrote him um, as a character who has his failings. He's an
Right.
imperfect guy. And
Definitely.
I always liked that about him. But but the whole thing at his heart,
Mm-hmm.
he is a hero. At
Yep.
his heart, he's a good man who just wants to do right. Uh,
Right.
and it was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun
Mm-hmm.
fleshing out his family. It was a lot of fun getting Black Canary and Ollie
Yep.
married. It was a lot of fun. Um,
Mm-hmm.
it was I think that was the longest that well, with the exception of Hilo, right now that's the longest
Right.
I've spent
Right.
with a character.
Yeah. So now I could grill you about Green Arrow 54 was how it was Dr. Light, but
Fire
I'm
away. Go ahead. No,
well. I just want to say
one
just the
more.
well.
One more for the road. Go ahead, sir.
Yep.
Go
Well,
ahead.
I was just gonna say was just the way of how yeah she fights Arthur and then she gets dropped onto a car. We see her in the hospital and then that was it for her for the rest of the story. Nowhere else. It felt like did you take her down just so you can get Ollie to meet up with Arthur? Because it just felt like since it didn't. Now I know it led right into Infinite Crisis. It
Well,
was just
you've got to do a little. You got to do a little bit of a reset. So,
yeah,
in our book, Doctor Light the hero fights Doctor Light the villain,
villain and loses
um,
badly.
and loses. Yeah, this was all going to be a part of that. We're going to reboot uh, Doctor Light the hero
Mm-hmm.
in a whole big way, and that was supposed to be done by somebody else
Mm-hmm.
outside of our book, and it just never happened.
Right.
So,
Then Dwayne
so
McDuffie had to fix it later.
yeah, no. I sort of remember who was going to do it, but I don't want to talk out of school.
All right. All
But
right.
that was part of it. Is that the idea came up and said, yeah, I'm going to get her. She get her head handed to her by Doctor Light. It's going to be horrible, but in
Mm-hmm.
this way, she will rise like a phoenix later.
All right.
Um,
Okay. That is good context.
including part of it was her powers were going to have a readjustment.
Mm-hmm.
As well, because part of her injuries was going to like tap into some stuff. There were things that were being planned.
Oh, okay.
So
I
at
had
the
no
time,
idea.
well, no one did because it didn't happen. Uh,
Right.
it never wound up happening, and it was one of those things where you just got to take your lumps. I know a lot of people liked Doctor Light a lot. I did too,
Mm-hmm.
which is why I was down with this idea.
Mm-hmm.
It was originally going to happen in Green Arrow, but then someone else was going to run with it, and then other things happened, and then a crossover happened, and this and that, and she sort of left there. So it
Right.
was later tackled, elsewhere.
Okay. Wow. That puts it in a whole new context. Wow.
Yeah. I mean, I've
Mm-hmm.
got 20 stories just like that of
Right.
things that
Right.
were
I
supposed
bet.
to happen but didn't, and we didn't quite get around to that, or
Mm-hmm.
this one had to use the character there, and then by the time we got around to it, this character changed this and that.
Mm-hmm.
They are present tense stories. They are the train constantly keeps moving. You got to jump on, or you're off.
Yep. All right. Well, that was a good one to end things out on because that's an issue that's always stuck with me for so long. So, again, Judd, thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate it. Getting a chance to talk to you and just gush like a fanboy.
It was absolutely my pleasure, Robert. I'm glad we had this time together.
Yep. And thank you, all of you guys for joining in. And who knows who I'll have on next. I'll catch you all later.